As India, the US and Japan practice naval maneuvers in the Indian Ocean, why are their war games gaining greater attention this year? And they say 80 million Chinese are regular players of an online game called King of Glory. Why the fascination? And how will this very Chinese game fare in an overseas market? Welcome to The Point. Live from Beijing, I'm Li Xin. Welcome to day 3 of our special series on the South Asian subcontinent. For the past 2 days, we've talked about the border standoff between China and India's Tibet policy, plus recent clashes between India and Pakistan in Kashmir. Today, we'll talk about joint naval drills in the Indian Ocean. It seems there is a lot going on in the region and tensions are high. I would like to say some of the events, such as the naval drills, were planned well in advance, so their timing with the other topics of contention is coincidental. Secondly, it is not our intention to exacerbate the mistrust between India and China. On both sides, there are people with entrenched attitudes, and equally, there are people who believe in greater exchanges. I'd like to think we belong to the latter group. In that spirit, let's discuss today's topic. Now, India, the US and Japan kicked off a 10-day naval exercise on Monday in the northern Indian Ocean. The 2017 exercise features both onshore and at-sea training off the eastern coast of India in the Bay of Bengal. It has gained extra attention this year given the current standoff in the Donglang or Doklam area between China and India. What's the significance of this edition of the so-called Malabar drill, which first took place in the early 1990s? Should China be concerned? For more discussion, I'm pleased to be joined by Professor Madhav Nalapat from Manipur University in Mumbai, and in Beijing by Ms. Han Hua from the School of International Studies at Peking University. Welcome to both of you. Professor Nalapat, let me ask you first. The US Navy said the trilateral drill is being held off India's coast with the aim of maintaining a balance of power in the Asia-Pacific by helping the three countries confront threats in the region. What specifically are those threats?
Well, you can have a large number of threats in Asia, and the fact about navies is navies have got a very huge operational area. For example, in East Asia, you have a developing situation in North Korea. Now, that situation may call for some kind of military action. And if that is the case, India is also one of the countries where North Korean missiles can reach. So obviously, there will be an interest in seeing if there is need for coordination on that. You can have a situation in the Middle East where terrorists can take over another country. They took over large parts of Syria, they've taken over large parts of Libya, of Iraq. So if they take over another country, for example, the GCC, or try to, that would obviously be something of very great concern to the US and to India. So you have a multiplicity of threats. And coming to the question of balance of power, I think it's, it's fairly logical for the Americans not to want a unipolar Asia. Now, they know the benefits to themselves of a unipolar world order. And frankly, they are being challenged on that, and the world is now no longer unipolar. But they do have a unipolar American continent. To some extent, they are unipolar in Europe as well, but not in Asia. So they would not like to be replaced by any other country becoming a unipolar force in Asia.
Yeah, I see. Basically, you're talking about the unipolar that's called China. Ms. Han, how does China perceive these drills? And do China agree with these sets of threats that Professor Nalapat just mentioned?
I think the threats the three countries share are not only geopolitical, but more beyond that. For example, the piracy in the sea, in the international water, and also the proliferation of weapons of massive destruction, and also terrorism. So the three countries have common clear threat perceptions in those fields. But having said that, China, as the rising power in that region in general, and in the Indian Ocean in particular, I think mounts quite a lot of concerns among the three countries. So I have to say there is a convergency among the three countries in terms of what kind of work they can work together to guarantee the so-called freedom of navigation in international water, and also how India will pursue their look east policy, and also especially under the Obama administration, the U.S., if they will continue to pursue the rebalancing strategy in this region. So maritime domain is a key factor or demonstrations of the emerging common interests among the three countries.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is an opportunity where all three countries can flex their naval muscle. For instance, the U.S. is sending the world's largest aircraft carrier. India is sending its only carrier, while the Japanese vessels include a helicopter carrier. So, Ms. Han, once again, what's the difference between this drill and previous drills in terms of scale?
The scale is obviously is the largest one over the last 23 years since 1994, and there are different stages along the line. For example, in the beginning, when we talk about Malabar drills, we basically talk about that area. I mean, the west coast of India, rather than the Bay of Bengal or in the Ocean Pacific, or if we say Okinawa, in that neighboring areas. So I think that in terms of the places and the main work the three countries have done is anti-submarine capability or collaboration among the three navies. So in that sense, I think China has emerged in the focal point among the three countries when they do the exercise.
Mm-hmm. Professor Nalapat, what is the Indian perspective on this question, and what about the perceived concern of China towards these drills? Basically, a lot of newspapers and media in India are pointing out that China is concerned about these drills.
Well, I think, China, some elements in China may be concerned about these drills. But so far as India is concerned, it's very clear that India and the United States are getting closer together in terms of defense and security. There is increasingly a perception that there are common interests in defense, security, and intelligence. And the two countries are working very closely together. In this context, the fact is that India is doing more military exercises with the United States than with any other country, or frankly any other 3 or 4 countries combined. And the US is also having India as a very major military partner. So this coming together of India and the US is now happening. And obviously when the US is there, Japan will follow, because Japan is, after all, since 1945, extremely close in terms of security to the US. So it's only natural that Japan is also part of the mix. I think what we are seeing is, frankly, one more affirmation of the fact that India and the US are becoming much closer in terms of defense and security.
But it has not always been this way. For instance, in the past, India showed a lot of reluctance to come into this close military partnership instead of, if not alliance. For instance, in the early 90s, the Malabar exercise only took place between India and the United States. In 2017, the scope expanded to include 5 nations, plus Japan, Australia, and Singapore. And in 2015, India and the US upgraded by formally including Japan, but downgrading from 5 countries to 3. What can we tell from the changes over the years regarding India's attitude towards its cooperation with other countries on the naval front? Professor Nalapat.
Well, I think there have been some changes depending on the period of time. And I think that is also related to certain pulls and pressures of the Indian bureaucracy and certain perceptions of the Indian political administration in power at that time. Since 2014, we have the BJP in power with a majority of its own, and we have Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has quite a different kind of person from Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, or even the other BJP Prime Minister Vajpayee. So from that point of view, I would believe that you are likely to see an expansion of the Malabar exercise, as in 2007, for example, when Singapore and Australia were part. Possibly in the future exercise, Singapore and Australia will also be a part, because many of the threats that Professor Han Hua very correctly mentioned are also common to Singapore and Australia. So it's important that these two countries also may want to join this very important annual exercise.
Ms. Han Hong, what is China's observance of the situation? I mean, first Singapore and Australia also joined these exercises, but China was very sensitive towards that, and now formally Australia, formally India, United States and Japan joining these exercises. What is China's position on this?
I have to point out in 2007, when the exercise took place near to Okinawa, I think specifically in that area, I think China shows his concern about the drill. So China sent the message or signal to the 5 countries. So in that time, Indian had to balance between his national interests, especially the national security interests and the economic interests. It had very close or growing economic or trade relations with China, but at the same time, maybe China reason make the India more unsecure. So, but they have to think if India will be an enemy or a kind of adversary toward China, or they have to think maybe it's better for India to play a kind of a role of a strategic partnership rather than the ally of the United States.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and I think India will have to think about that very carefully for the long-term stability in this part of the world, and for the interest of India as well. We have to leave it there. Many thanks to both of you, Professor Madhav Nalapat from Manipur University and Ms. Han Hua from the School of International Studies at Peking University. And you have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break. We'll be back right after this with a topic on online gaming. Come back as soon as possible.
CGTN shows you more, providing a fresh global voice you can trust.
And a different look at the world you won't find anywhere else.
We offer unparalleled coverage of Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
We present diverse perspectives on news and newsmakers from around the world.
We want to engage our viewers with stories that represent the complete picture.
We want to share with you ideas that matter to us all.
The stories, the people, the issues.
A new and balanced perspective.
CGTN. See the difference.
Whether or not you are an online gamer, you may have heard of this multiplayer online battle arena game in China called King of Glory. It was launched in 2015 and with over 200 million registered players, it has become the most popular online game in China. Successful as it is, criticism of it is also growing. It is reported that, for instance, a 17-year-old gamer in southern Guangdong province suffered a stroke after playing for 40 hours non-stop, and an 11-year-old girl spent 100,000 yuan, or just under 15,000 US dollars, using her parents' credit cards just to buy game equipment. Others are also concerned about the game's storyline, which they say distorts Chinese history and culture. Nevertheless, the game is becoming ever more popular. Its overseas version is about to be released in Europe and in America. So is King of Glory a force for good or bad? Joining me in the discussion today is Xu Xingduo, current affairs commentator from China Radio International, and Cao Can, author of The Dollar Apocalypse and also a King of Glory player. But first, let's take a look at this background report.
In the game, players can choose from dozens of fantasy characters and then join their friends in a team. Each round of the game runs about 15 minutes. It's free at first, but if players want more powerful new weapons or a different interface, they have to pay for them. Statistics from iResearch show 54% of King of Glory players are young people aged from 18 to 28 years old. They have contributed a good amount to Tencent's revenues. The sales of King of Glory reached 6 billion yuan, or just under $1 billion, in the first quarter of this year. China's gaming industry has seen explosive growth in recent years. The smartphone game revenues of Tencent reached 12.9 billion yuan, or $2 billion, in the first quarter, up 20.6% quarter-on-quarter. Another Chinese gaming giant, NetEase, saw a revenue increase of almost 36% during the same period. The gaming sales volume in China is expected to reach 70 billion yuan, or just under $10 billion this year. The problem is that so many parents have complained about their children becoming addicted to the game that Tencent has started limiting the playing time for children and teenagers. Those under 12 are limited to no more than 1 hour a day and cannot play after 9 p.m, while those aged from 12 to 18 can play no more than 2 hours a day.
Well, indeed, very concerning for parents. But let's talk about this game first, gentlemen. Qingduo, tell us what's so different? What makes King of Glory so popular? I mean, we've heard so many online games. Why this one stand out so much?
Well, it's well made and, role play. And it gives the youngsters basically the space to become someone probably you have been dreaming of. And so it's like a real world for them. Remember, youngsters in the real life, sometimes they find it hard to communicate with their parents or with their teachers, with their peers. So in this world, you have total freedom.
Wow, is that why my children are playing video games? Because they find it hard to talk to me. But Cao Can, tell us your experience. I mean, I know you played this game. How do you find it? What's so attractive about it?
Well, I personally don't understand why it's so attractive, but it's incredible success. Well, because, I'm actually more than 30 years old. If I like this game to the same extent that the teenagers like it, my parents would be getting really concerned.
Okay.
Like, grow up.
But you look much younger.
But what I mean is, this is not the first online game in China, right? Why is this one particularly popular?
Well, I think it's really about the size. It's 200 million registers, and remember, it's growing. It's mobile. It's accessible. It's easier with the popularization of mobile phone use. I mean, more and more youngsters, as probably as young as 6-year-old, you have a mobile phone, and then you have the game. You can download the app. You can play the game.
What's the danger of that? I mean, 6-year-olds, having the convenience of games in their hands, and they can play whenever they can, even just for 15 minutes. Cao Can.
Well, it is a problem when teenagers get addicted to it, but the game should not be played for the addiction. If anything, the game should actually be applauded because it's an incredible success. The fact that people are addicted to it attests to the success of the game because the company just want to create something that caters to the taste of the customers. It's really the parents who should be held responsible for their kids' addiction. Are they providing alternative forms of entertainment for the kids?
Are you saying that the company Tencent is not responsible at all if children or large number of children are addicted to?
That's how the market economy works. I believe the social responsibility of a corporation is to create profits for the shareholders, for the customers. It is the regulators, parents, who should play a paternalistic role in terms of guiding their kids into alternative or more diverse forms of entertainment. The company itself should be just profit driven. That's how the market economy works. If we impose additional responsibility on the company, then we're really requiring too much of them.
Well, like if you approach this topic from the business point of view, of course, the profit seeking is the only goal of any business, probably corporation, Tencent included. But that's why we're also talking about the social responsibility of any big corporations. You have a role to play socially. Let's say previously we talked about say community service, probably providing public services where you are located. But now, when it comes to the mobile gaming, probably it's something different. Something like can we said anything maybe will help or protect the youngsters.
But the problem is, where do you draw the line? For instance, like Coca-Cola has a lot of sugar in it. If people eat a lot of unhealthy food, they can get unhealthy, a lot of fats. Are you going to say that people are not, like those companies have also a social responsibility to reduce their advertising?
But the thing is, Tencent, for instance, itself is trying to regulate. For instance, as we've just seen in the report, Tencent has been trying to put all kinds of measures into the game so that, for instance, kids will not be allowed to play over a certain period of time every day.
But sure, there's been a lot of public pressure online to do something. But I don't think that's their priority. That's not their main concern. I think, if they don't do something, then the public pressure can be overwhelming. But I don't think that's the right way to approach it.
So they're doing it because they had to. They feel they had to. Qingduo, what is
Well, that's exactly social responsibility, because socially people see this is unacceptable. And as a big player, you are billions of dollars earning in terms of earnings. I do think that there's a responsibility for Tencent to play socially.
But isn't that like a shifting of responsibility? The parents shifting the responsibility.
On the other hand, I tell you, do you have children?
I hope to have it soon.
Okay, as a mother, I tell you, it's very difficult to control your children, especially you cannot be there 24 hours a day to watch whether they're playing games. So good that my children are not playing these, but if they do, I hope there is some kind of control, automatic control, that they are not allowed to play non-stop 40 hours.
But that's not the right way to guide them. I mean, you can have this very strongman approach. But I would think a better approach is give them more alternative ways of entertainment. For instance, take them hiking, show them the Disneyland, show them an exotic vacation somewhere, or show them, a painting class or other. Just give them alternative avenues to explore their interests.
Good suggestions, but beside that, there are there are roles to be played by parents, role to be played by schools, role to be played by Tencent,
and last but not least, what's the problem of just having some fun? Life is so short.
Good point.
Especially when you grow up, when you're so young, that's the only time you can be carefree.
Between fun and
I
addictive,
agree with that.
There's a line.
Some fun is good, maybe not too much, especially when you're addicted to it, but really it's very, very difficult. Another topic that's of contention is whether this game has been distorting history or Chinese culture, because there are some characters in this game. For instance, this guy who's called Jin Ke, he was, in history, he is actually the assassin of the first emperor of China, but in this game, it's depicted as a seductive woman in the game. So what kind of influence do you think this can have?
Well, personally, I would think we should rate these mobile games, and for an adult, that's no problem. You say, Jinke somehow is becoming a female. I can accept that. I know this is a game.
You mean rate this game?
Yeah, rate this game like a certain age.
But
you should not be allowed to play. It's like a rating movies.
It's like very difficult. I mean, when you have your WeChat account, basically you can access this game, right? Does everybody has to be rated on their
No. To reach a certain games, what kind of games like you have to reach a certain age to play this set of games.
But what is the problem with having imaginary characters in the game?
Imposing additional regulations would create extra layers of complexities. I think it's going to be a major problem if our kids rely on a game to learn history. That's not the primary function of a game. The function of the game is to entertain. If anything, I want the game to actually create these fictional characters, because the kids would understand that it's just a game. They're not be misled into believing
Maybe-
that
Well,
exactly, that's the
they can learn
problem.
history from the
It's
game.
misleading. You're like for a 7-year-old.
Don't underestimate the intelligence of
No,
teenagers.
no.
Maybe
They're
the
much
kids-
smarter than we
Maybe
give
the
them
kids
credit
really
for.
just grow up and thinking, okay, there's this guy, she's a woman.
She's a woman.
Whereas
Like
in
that's the first time they get understanding.
Yeah,
of,
but on the other
the
hand,
Jingke.
Qingduo, I must agree, I must say, maybe some kids would never know who Jingke is apart from the game.
That's why I say, like, if they graduated from the, junior high school, they learn history, they know who Jingke is, and then they play the game, that's no problem. But before that, the first time they know the name of Jingke is a female, seductive female, and that would be sort of like, distorting history. It's hard for them to accept, again, in real history, Jingke is assassin.
Well, you can be a full functioning, contributing member of the society without knowing who Jingke is. I think you can create a lot of value for the society.
But it's
there are
not
a lot
just
of
about
wonderful, excellent entrepreneurs,
No, but
businessmen.
Jingke is just an example here. We're not just talking about this particular one person, basically a number. But
yeah, but the game is just to entertain, just to have some fun.
It should not be
Create a place where the friends can actually play with each other, or couples can play with each other. We shouldn't assign additional meaning to the games.
Yeah, I agree with you in this point. There's a difference probably in terms of age. People beyond 30, like you don't see it like addictive at all. But for those like teenagers or even younger, they find it really addictive. They spend like 40 hours a day. That's really damaging to their health, psychologically and physically.
Well, if they don't like if you get rid of the game, they're gonna find some other addictions to kill their time.
The problem doesn't go away, sure.
Exactly.
The game, 1 minute left, the game will go international or overseas later this year. How do you look at the prospect competing with World of War, what is that called? The
World of Warcraft?
Yeah. How
well,
do you see the
business perspective is good. Absolutely.
You think?
Yeah, export of Chinese products, what's wrong with that? Not necessarily, I don't know, like whether you call it culture of Chinese culture. Or export of Chinese cultural products probably is questionable. But anyway.
Do you see it this way?
A good movie is a good movie, a good song is a good song, and a good game is a good game. I think people everywhere, if you localize to the local customers, the game could also be an incredible success anywhere in the world.
Well, we have to leave it there. Many thanks, gentlemen. Xu Qingduo and Cao Can, our current affairs commentator. It's always a pleasure to have you in the studio. And here is my last point. As a mother, I have mixed feelings towards online games. It's impossible not to give your kid a laptop or a smartphone these days. It's equally impossible to prevent them from playing online games because that's what so many of their friends are doing. As a parent, I constantly live in the fear that they would become addicted, but forbid them, I don't really have many other replacement hobbies that would engage them equally. What I could hope is to give them a relatively busy schedule so that they wouldn't have much time to play. I hope they're not listening at this time. And I also try to spend quality time with them so that they don't retreat into the virtual world for fun and satisfaction. What it basically comes down to is a test of good parenting, only that my opponent is very formidable and increasingly so. Whoever said having kids is easy? That's all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow me on Twitter or visit our Facebook page using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN Live to watch our show on your mobile devices or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You got the point.